Hello, I'm Dr. M. Welcome to VMC. Today we are going to discuss what could be the most valuable behavior you can teach your pets. It's something that I start working on as soon as any animal joins my household. So join me, you'll learn something. So there are many important behaviors that we need to teach to our pets, but taking medication on cue can very literally be life-saving and needs to be something that's fairly high on the priority list. This is because every pet at some point in their life will need to take medication by mouth, and a lot of people try to hide the medication, and the problem with this is that over time the animals almost always find it. And if you have a more fussy animal, it can lead them to start refusing any and all new foods because they have an association with being presented with something new and finding something really yucky inside of it as a surprise. And nobody likes being surprised with a yucky tasting something in the middle of some food that initially looked appealing. It also will erode the trust between the person and the pet. It's stressful for everybody, it takes a lot of time, and almost always it eventually fails. I can't tell you how many times clients say to me, I've tried hiding it in peanut butter, cream cheese, butter, canned food, pill pockets, on and on and on, and the animal is just finding it in everything and they can no longer medicate their pets. As a result, as soon as an animal joins my household, I start working with them on taking medications on cue. No tricks, no coaxing, no bribes. This just becomes a learned behavior. In order to teach this behavior, we are going to rely on something called the Premack principle. Now, this principle was originally named after a scientist named David Premack. He was doing a study involving some monkeys, and the conclusion from that research was that a less desirable behavior can be reinforced by immediately after having access to a more desirable behavior. So let's give a few examples of this. Let's say for a student, if you say, get this coursework done, then you can go play on the playground. Another common scenario where Premack principle is used is playing fetch with a dog. You drop the ball, which is less desirable to the dog, and that means that I will immediately throw it again for you, which is more desirable. So the dropping behavior can be reinforced by the throwing. We know that this Premack principle can work for all species. In this particular situation, what we're going to do is teach the dog or cat or any other animal, you take this less good thing and you will immediately get something delicious as a reward for your efforts. So before you ever start teaching this to any of your pets, keep in mind that it's very important that whatever the reinforcement is has to be quite reinforcing to your individual learner. So something that my cat or dog might really enjoy may not be the same as whatever your pet might really enjoy. So you're going to have to tailor this to them personally. And it's also important that we are not stingy with rewarding for the behavior that we're wanting. So this is because if the first behavior is too onerous for the learner, they will opt out and they will go, this isn't worth doing. So we need to make sure that doing that first behavior is worthwhile to the learner. So step one, we need the learner to understand the skill of taking 2 items of food back to back very quickly and swallowing them both almost instantaneously. So start with 2 pieces of treat, and this is also where you are going to have to learn some mechanics. So some people might find that using 2 hands is easiest for this. Some people might find that 1 hand is easiest and you can load the 2 rewards in 1 hand and 1, 2 into the pet's mouth. This will depend a little bit on you, a little bit on what your learner prefers. Some learners will want to lick the item out of your hand. Some will just open their mouth and want to gobble it. So this is where we figure out what our particular animal likes, and we also practice our own mechanics to make sure that we are getting these 2 items into the animal one right after the other. You should also be verbally praising the animal for the behavior that you want if they find that reinforcing. So with step 2, you decrease the value of the first treat while keeping the second one a higher value. This still should be pretty easy for your learner, but this is where we're starting to introduce that concept of take this thing that's a little less good and you'll immediately after get something that's very delicious. Step 3 is where we incrementally increase the amount of time between the first treat and the second more higher value treat. Initially, we were giving them almost instantaneously back to back. Now we're going to, by like a quarter of a second or an eighth of a second, increase the time between the two items. We want to get to the point where the first item is being completely swallowed before giving the second item. This helps to clarify for the learner that the goal behavior is swallow this first thing, then you get the delicious treat. Once you have step 3 very reliably down, and you don't have to put pressure on yourself, going through these steps might occur for a young, very hungry, growing animal who will eat almost anything. All these steps you might be able to get through in 2 sessions for an animal like that. But for an animal who is a little bit more suspicious, or who you have tried to trick in the past, or that just doesn't have as good of an appetite, this might take a number of days. It will also depend on your timing and your mechanics and your skills. So just short sessions more often will lead to better results than trying to just rush through this. So if you get to, say, step 3 on your first day, then on the next day, back up a step just to refresh where you're at with you and your learner, and then try to progress again. So step 4 is where we start introducing bland items and or non-food items. Now, because we have made this more challenging, we go back to giving the bland item immediately followed by the tasty treat. Not having that time gap in between removes any doubt that the learner might feel about, should I swallow this? Is this the behavior that the person is wanting from me? You just go back to 1, 2, right instantaneously, one after the other. So it will depend a little bit on what is considered bland to your individual learner. Some people have great success with, say, dog or cat safe vegetables, something that your dog or cat wouldn't instantly think, oh, this is great, I should try this, but something that's also not revolting to them. You could consider items like cucumber or carrot. Some people will get empty capsules from a pharmacy. You can buy those. Some people will use things like pieces of a glucosamine tablet. You can discuss with your veterinarian if you need other options, but just find something, anything that your animal doesn't find rewarding, but that also isn't gross. It's also important that at no point during this training plan that you change your behavior. So you need to be acting normal, upbeat, happy, like this is just the same behavior that we were doing before with 2 treats. Don't act suspicious or start wheedling or begging or doing anything like that. Just present the 2 items to your learner the exact same way you were doing it before. Step 5 is where we start building that delay between the first item and the second item again. Now you want to make sure that at every point your learner is looking eager and not having any hesitation. If you're noticing any pausing, then that means you're moving through the steps too fast and or you're not rewarding well enough for the behavior your learner is doing for you. And so you're going to increase the amount of time between the 2 items by like an eighth of a second at a time. And do this very, very gradually until you get to the point again where the learner is able to swallow the first item before being given the reward. And if at any point during this step you see your learner make some progress, make sure to jackpot that. Give them 5 or 6 treats in quick succession, just being like, yes, that's exactly what I want you to do. That will make it clear to the animal, and it will also very much reinforce this behavior. We want them to think, this is kind of a weird game, but if I swallow this thing, I get paid well for it, so I'm in. Let's keep going. Step 6. So it is only at this point that we start to add a cue. I'm not very creative. I just simply say, take your meds, but you could use something like take your pill. You could just say pill, anything that you want to use as a cue for your animal so that they now anticipate, when I hear this, I'm going to have to swallow something a bit weird, and then I will get rewarded for it. That is what we want them to understand. And so the cue predicts what is going to happen next. Now, it's very important here that you continue to be generous and reward this behavior. And it's also important that you are very confident that your learner will do the behavior before you add the cue. So I tend to say, if you bet me $100 that your learner will do this, then you might be ready to add the cue. And it's also important to remember the order is say the cue, present the medication, present the reward. We are not bribing, camouflaging, anything like that. We want the learner to understand what they are doing. Take your meds. And we are not trying to trick or fool them. One last note I'll put here, there are some medications that are going to be nastier than others. And for those, you can consider a thin coat of something because there's no need to punish your learner. Then I would reward even more generously afterwards, just so that you don't lose this behavior. But you still want to make it clear, cue, take this weird item, get rewarded for it. The point of this is that our animal looks forward to taking their medication and that they will choose to keep doing it because they know it pays well for them. So actually in our household now, if you open anything that sounds like a medication, both animals come booking over because they're hoping that it's for them. I have to get some fake medication ready for my pets so that I can give them their medication, reward them, and then everybody's happy. But that's the type of enthusiasm that you're looking for from your learner. You want them to think that this is a fantastic game. Sure, maybe it's a little weird, but it pays well, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Put the time in now to teach your pets. This is a very, very important and valuable behavior, and it could very well save their life in the future when they need something and you don't want to have to stress them out or put them off of eating or take up a lot of time or force medication down them. This is such a crucial behavior and every animal should know it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that this video has been helpful for you. Please comment if you have a future topic idea you'd like me to cover. I'm always happy to hear from you. Did you already teach your pet this behavior? Have you ever thought about teaching your pet to take medication on cue? Let's start a discussion and get more learners happily taking their medication. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you next week as we put out a new video most Fridays. Bye.